On this New Year's, the Pentagon saying it reached, quote, a significant milestone in the effort to close Gitmo after transferring the last of 22 Uyghur Chinese nationals. The move comes amid renewed efforts by President Obama to fulfill his promise to close the U.S. military prison in Cuba, despite some intense opposition in Congress. Major General Bob Scales joins us now, Fox News military analyst. General Scales, I want to start with this. Put aside the logistics right now of this latest move. Broader picture here. Is America safer by drawing down Gitmo and eventually closing it, or do we need to keep it open?
Well, for now, Leland, we need to keep it open. Remember now, about half of the 155 inmates that are left are from Yemen or from Saudi Arabia. This is the last hardcore remnants of the post 9/11 war on terror. And not only do we not want to release them, but their parent countries don't want them back. The last thing the leaders of Yemen want is 55 hardcore Yemeni terrorists to show up on their doorstep right when they're just beginning to get a handle on their own counterterrorism effort in their own country. No, what's left once the Uyghurs are gone, what's left are some pretty bad guys that have been, in many ways, made more radical by their sojourn in Gitmo over the last 11 years, Leland.
So you have these 155 guys left. There's not a lot of countries that want to take them. What do you do with them?
Well, that's the question. The administration has been all around the world. They've been to El Salvador, they've been to Slovakia, they've been to Poland, they've been to many different countries, even islands in the Pacific, in an effort to find someone who's willing to take these terrorists. And for the most part, these countries have said no. And now that you're into this last 155, the last thing the Seychelles need is to have 40 or 50 Yemeni terrorists show up on their doorsteps. So the U.S. is putting enormous pressure on these countries to please take these guys off our hands. But I would suggest probably at the end of this administration, Gitmo will still be open. There'll still be 100 or so hardcore terrorists they can't get rid of. And it'll be a long time before we see Gitmo finally closing its doors, Leland.
General, you've been in these meetings before. I want to take you, though, looking forward from this. At one point, Gitmo was the place of last resort, the worst of the worst. We could send them there. What options does the administration now have when they catch the worst of the worst and need to put them someplace? In some ways, it seems like the only option is bring them to the United States. That opens up the issue of them having access to the U.S. courts. What's the administration to do? What's the military to do?
Well, that's a great question for the military in particular, because the only place you can put them is in the country that you capture them. Look at Afghanistan, for instance. I mean, we've put hundreds of Taliban terrorists into these prisons in Kabul, and what's happened? Well, we've turned the prisons over to Hamid Karzai, who has already started to release many of these terrorists back to the Taliban. So our options are limited. The CIA is prevented by law now from doing this sort of thing. There just aren't many places for these bad guys to go. They certainly are not going to go back to Gitmo in this administration. So increasingly, the terrorists who are being captured are being left with the parent country, and oftentimes they either escape or they're released back in their environment. It's sort of like, what do they call it when you fish? It's called sort of a catch and release program. That's sort of where we are right now.
Not what you want to do with these guys. It reminds me of the Arabic saying that translates, I have two choices, both of which are bitter, which seems what the administration has right now. General Bob Scales, thanks for joining us. Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to our men and women in uniform, Leland.
For sure, and may this New Year bring a little bit more peace for them as well. Thanks.
Right.